Welcome to another edition of Hashtag Finance. I'm your host, Barrington Miller, and today I'm here with Get Rich or Die Trying, Dafina Lovelace, Kellie Sauls. Welcome to Toronto. How are you?
Doing great. We're good.
Loving Toronto.
It's exciting. The water tastes different.
We'll just jump right into it. The water tastes different. So the reason we're here today is I was at an event. I was at a cannabis-related event, after party. I think it was in May. And we were sitting on a rooftop patio, and I encountered Dafina, who was having a very, very excited conversation with a tall European gentleman. And we started talking. And she told me that she had an investment group that was predominantly, if not all, Black women. And that sort of got the ball rolling. And they happen to invest in cannabis stocks. I'm not sure if it's just exclusively cannabis, but that's where our focus, the reason for us being there. And I said, hey, listen, whenever you're in Toronto, come by the CSE office, located on the 72nd floor at First Canadian Place. Come by. And she said, are you sure? I said, yes, I'm sure. She's like, no, really, because I'm going to bring my group and we will come by. I was like, yeah, sure. Just make sure you're right. Let me know. A couple days later, get an email. Hey, we're going to be in town. These dates work. Let me know. So
we made it.
Yep, they're here. And trust me when I say she brought everybody, the whole crew. So enough about that. Let's talk Get Rich or Die Trying.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your company.
We call it G.R.O.D.T.
G.R.O.D.T.
So we don't have to say get rich or die trying all the time.
It can be a mouthful. But we started back in 2011, and the awesome thing about the relationship that Kellie and I have, so everybody in the group pretty much has a relationship, somewhat with me, yeah. So some of them are like my best friends since high school. 2 of them are my line sisters from when I pledged Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And just had to add that.
I know.
And Kellie is the person that called and told me I got into business school when I applied to the Darden School of Business. And we just had a great relationship since then. But in 2011, I come home from business school, and one of our members, she's like, so we sent you off to business school 2 years in, how we gonna make some money? And she's a lawyer, and it was just like, yeah, I don't really know. I know how to do financial statements. I know how to do some marketing, but how about we capitalize on this idea that I had, which was to start this investment group.
And she talked about that coming into business school. So
yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I was just waiting for her to come back to me and say, I'm ready. Let's do this.
Let's do this.
And it was on a visit when after I graduated, we're sitting down on like somewhere in the grounds, and it's just like, so Kellie, you want to do this investment club thing with me? She's like, yes. I'm like, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but it should be fun and we'll figure it out together. And everybody just decided. It was 9 of us that have decided, and we all live in different states, but we all came together and decided that we're going to pool our money together and create a different wealth profile for ourselves individually and then the group collectively, and just set an example for us of just being able to be debt-free, to think about how we move through the world as investors and not just consumers, and have fun also, just be able to take these annual vacations together, kind of check on one another, get a little good therapy free.
So I identified you and your group as a Black women's investment group. And I didn't want to be, I guess, finite in my labeling, because you can be anything that you want to be. It just so happens that you are. You're investors that happen to be Black women. But I feel that it's really important that you are, simply because that's where the majority of household decisions are being made and are made by women. I think it's even higher amongst women of color.
80% of household decisions made by women.
And even higher for women of color. And it starts at an earlier age for women of color. So even, young women of color in high school are already contributing to their households. They're working and contributing. They go off to college. Those that are fortunate to still work and send money back home. So this is something that, kind of starts at an earlier age for women of color.
Does and I know you're from New York. Is there any state funding or anything like that, or is this just it? Like it's just you
for our group?
For your group,
it's all
It's
individual
all of us.
contributions. Yeah, no state funding. We just make it a priority to save and invest. It's like the foundations of kind of this wealth mindset is that you have to be a good saver, and so we made sure that every member was a good saver for at least a year.
Oh, wow.
While we also studied what is the stock market, how does the stock market work, looking at sample purchases of stock and how would you do evaluation? How do you know that this is a good investment, all while we're saving, so that we all had a particular time frame to come up with a lump sum of cash. And so that runway allowed everybody to save that lump sum of cash so we could invest.
That was my next question: is how does one become a member of your group? Like how do we have to know you? You have to know a guy who knows a guy.
Well, we've decided this founding group is going to stay founding.
Okay.
We've talked about perhaps creating more groups where we can be members of those groups. So we enlarge kind of our influence and what we're doing. But this founding core group is going to stay the way it is. We really talk a lot about, early on, okay, how do we get to a place where we grow wealth? We generate and we grow wealth. Because it's really easy to do riches, but wealth is another dimension altogether.
There's
right?
rich and then there's wealthy.
Exactly.
Right.
And so having that mindset earlier on, we just didn't, there was a lot of trust in our group. Which I think surprises some people. They're like, hey, how do you trust one another? You have stuff built in. No, we trust one another.
That's so important.
And so when you're adding people in, it shifts that dynamic a little bit. And so that's why we made the decision to keep it where we are now, but at some point in time, potentially grow, add additional investment groups as a part of our network.
Now, what's your group's investment profile? Like what is there a sector? Is there does the stock have to be performing, or a company have to be performing or meet certain criteria that you yourself have set forth, or does it vary case by case? Is there one person that the group turns to and says, "Okay, well, what do you think?" Like how does it work? How does it work behind the scenes?
It's very democratic. Each person in the group has to make a pitch at some point in time. For their stock. So that means you got to do your homework, right? Yeah. You got to do your due diligence.
It's like it's Dragon's Den.
Yeah. So, so at some point, everyone in our group has pitched a stock. And we have conversations. We do a pitch deck. We share it with the group. And then we take the questions, just as if you would expect from a normal pitch. And then based on the results of our conversation, we vote and we decide, is this a stock we want to invest in?
Majority wins?
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much.
2/3 vote.
Yeah.
Oh.
2/3.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And our original knowledge was around investing in stocks. So that was just our initial foray. There's a lot of data out there about stock, and I had a previous background working in financial services. I worked at a couple of banks, and I had personally been an investor, and so it was something easy to kind of share the wealth of knowledge around this particular industry. I had done electronic trading. I was a programmer and did some analyst work for them and project manager, all of that stuff. So I knew the language and the landscape, and that was kind of an easy way to start looking at how do we relate some of the decisions that we have to make as consumers, so our buying habits and our purchasing habits, to now becoming investors in those things that we're constantly consuming. So think about, Black women is we're one of the best smells in the world for me is Clorox bleach, and it's just like refreshing, and it makes my house feel clean
and pure,
and it just gives you a level of confidence that things are right here, you know. So that would be like one of the stocks that somebody might have pitched, and like me and a couple of my friends or the other investors, we love Hennessy. So cognac is a great thing for us. And one of the initial stocks that somebody pitched was like LVMH, and because it had the Hennessy connection, like this is what I would drink. So let me become an investor in that. And that was kind of like one of the first keys in looking at what you consume to become an investor in it. And maybe it's not the shiny object. Maybe it's not the the computer or the bottle of Moet Hennessy, but it's the next piece in the value chain that we're going to look at investing in.
There's that personal connection, and
Right.
there's millions of investors, and there's millions of ways to invest.
Right.
There's even a little bit of knowledge too, because if you think about it, like we're savvy purchasers. Like I don't see us as being, kind of compulsive purchasers. We think about, why do I like this more? Oh, I like that better, or that tastes better to me. Maybe it's the way that the let's take Hennessy for example is produced, right? Or why do I buy Clorox over another brand?
Lysol, right?
Yeah,
Right.
And there's that. But at the core of it, you do have to be knowledgeable about what you're even purchasing and putting into your household, and what kind of car do you drive? Are you purchasing oil and gas, or are you looking at solar panels? And that was like one of the greatest. It was an awesome pitch that Kellie almost never did.
What happened? What happened?
So she's like, and this is where like the personal preferences lead us into interesting markets. So Kellie is very much about the world and nature, concerned like green energy and, renewables, reduce, recycle and all of that. And so Kellie, you had come up with Solar City. And it was just a solar company. It's really interesting, but she talked about it for like 3 or 4 meetings.
I did. I was determined. They weren't feeling me at first. Yeah. So we talked about it, and then we decided to go in, and then a little while after, Solar City was acquired.
Oh.
By a little company named Tesla.
Oh, that company. Yeah, I think we've heard of that.
Yeah. And so, like, she had talked about it so much. I purchased it in my personal portfolio before the investment club purchased it in their portfolio.
And that's something you do too. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And a number of us did. And that's where, like, that personal risk tolerance is a little bit, questioning, or allows the group to be a little bit more democratic, because I'm very highly... I'm a risk taker, and other people are like the other end. Like, I don't want to take a risk. It seems absolutely too good to be.
I think it's needed. I think in a group, in such a trustworthy group, you need that. You can't have 9 women that are all risk takers, because this will be the shortest existence of an investment group. I think it actually helps and strengthens your group.
Yeah.
And so it changes too, because we have to monitor, right? So we have to report back out at each meeting how the stock is performing. And so that changed my whole, like when I went in, I'm like, Solar City, that's the pitch I want to make. Here's why I think we should be investing, so on and so forth. Now all of a sudden it's Tesla. And so I have to think of Tesla as more than just a car company. How do I talk about that in the way that I originally intended our investment to go?
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. But you must have been feeling pretty good after. Absolutely.
I was like, I predicted that.
You saw that.
I knew it was coming.
But then, like later we found out like the owner of Solar City is cousins with Elon Musk. So, like, had you known a little bit more about these relationships,
she did.
You know what's funny?
No insider trading knowledge here.
I do remember reading, but it was not a factor. It just kind of got lost back in the memory bank. And then when Dafina brought it up, I was like, oh yeah, so yeah.
So right now we're going to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, we will discuss your recent investments and the stocks that you're looking into.
Broadcasting from the heart of Toronto's financial district at the top of First Canadian Place, CSE TV is your trusted source for what's happening in capital markets. Our Hashtag Finance podcast series gets you exclusive long-form interview content with visionary entrepreneurs and CEOs of companies in the news. The CSE's On the Street segments get you up close and personal with many of our listed companies. And don't forget that you can find the video version of this and all our media on our CSE TV channel on YouTube. For instant notifications, subscribe to CSE TV now.
And we're back with Hashtag Finance, and we are having a good time here. So now your investment company is looking at and considering cannabis and cannabis stocks and companies. What are some of the things that some of the things that you've learned about cannabis companies? Which ones would you consider? You don't have to name names, but types of. Whether they're grow operations or vaporizer companies. Talk a little bit about your cannabis lens now.
So there came a period where we said, hey, we want to do a little angel investing, right? And so one of the potential investor or potential companies that we heard from that did a pitch to our investment group wanted to go into cannabis. And so it was something that had come on our radar a while before that. And we were just like, well, how does this work? Like, it's still federally illegal. Like, how? So we just gave the homework assignment to the entire investment club and said, learn as much as you can.
Right.
And then this company came and pitched to us, and we were like, oh, we really need to learn. Like, we really need to really think about this and move quickly.
Yeah, there was so much we didn't know. Yeah. When they pitched, it was like that exercise where you just like underline every word that you don't know to go look it up in a dictionary later. It was kind of one of those. And it was just like, there's a lot going on here. And I think there was also, I will speak personally for me, there's this stigma, if you will, in our communities where we have been told that cannabis is bad. And for, the rule following ladies that we are, that I am, it's like everything has been by the rule. Like you go to school, you get a degree, you follow the rule of the law. And so now there's this kind of hazy, no pun intended, but this hazy environment where cannabis is making a huge leap. You don't see many Black people involved in any of it. And you still have Black people in jail at a large percentage for infractions in the cannabis or, weed space. And so having that kind of on your back as you're also thinking about the potential of an angel investment in an industry where you can see the value of the product that the founders are creating. However, it's still this
push and pull.
This tug of war between what was formerly socially moral value that is now shifting, and how do I shift with that and get to be an investor?
So we did a podcast here not too long ago with a gentleman named Alex Friedman, who works for the Deputy County LA Sheriff's Office, and we spoke about the social equity program, and you can check it out on Hashtag Finance. And we talk about that, the war on drugs and what it's meant to communities and why we do have a social equity program, what it's done to Black communities and why there aren't, in this billion upon billion of dollar industry, why there aren't men and women of color whose communities, lives, neighborhoods have all been affected and are still affected. Right. And the direction that program's going in. So when you have a chance, you should. Our listeners, I'm not telling you, our listeners and our viewers should check it out. But yeah, there's a tie-in and it's real. We haven't felt it up here in Canada to the same degree, but it's very, very real, which is why and I think it's really important that you're touching upon it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And just from then, there's that part of it, but then there's the, get rich or die trying. Mm-hmm. That's what we're trying to do. And we're looking for early entrants into profitable markets and taking what we now know about investing in stock. And we invested in a healthcare company as well that's in Atlanta. And taking what we now know and our successful, track record that we've had over the years, and we know we go slow and steady, and that's going to win us the race if we all go together. Take that, how do we now lay that over this cannabis space and start thinking about taking the same experiences? How do we use different products for ailments? I mean, we're a group of women, and so menstruation and menopause and all these things that affect women are real, and now there's solutions to like these everyday problems that 51% of the Earth's population has to deal with, and there's a tie to that. So just looking at the companies, so one of the companies that we looked at that I think some of us invested in is in the medical space, and they're looking at ways of using cannabis, whether it's the THC or the other one, CBD, to like help with medical issues. And so that's personal to us, and we could see the value of it. Like that's not their only business, but they're in that medical space. They're international. They're paying a dividend. They have that potential to do really well, and they're not, for the U.S. base, it's not like they're growing it, but they're using it for that research. And medical marijuana use is really, it's more widely legalized in the U.S. versus the recreational.
Health and wellness.
Yep,
right.
Exactly.
And so that was one avenue that we're taking, and just seeing where else can this go. Now you've got all of the ancillary products and, things for usage, and, there's the leisure side of it that is also just from a everyday consumer point of view, going to be very interesting to watch and has a lot of potential for growth.
Now, do you have an exit strategy? And I don't mean per investment or per, but I mean as the group. Like, is there like a cap number? Once we hit this in our growth, then we're out, or is it we're just going to keep doing this, try and build generational wealth? I don't know if we didn't even talk about kids and families and spouses and other parts and extensions, which are all real and which are all factors. And is there an exit group strategy or?
So when we first started, we established, we kind of developed this guideline document. And so, every so often we'll revisit because people's situations change.
Absolutely.
One thing that hasn't changed, though, is our exit strategy. We see this as a long-term commitment, and we want to grow it as big as we can. And we know that with the slow and steady approach that we have, it's going to be long-term. We even talked about at that time, what if something happens to one of us and we want to leave it to, either a child or a family member or whatnot. And so some of that is included in our document. I think we'll probably be adjusting that probably until, someone
as it should.
Exactly.
It's a living, breathing part of your organization.
Yeah, and to the part about the legacy piece, when we started in 2011, one of our members, her daughter might have been about 9.
Yeah.
And so she was coming to the meetings because she's a single mom, and so her daughter was coming to the meetings, and she was part of the hostess committee, so she'd help us set up. She'd serve the food. We taught her how to measure cocktails. But one of the great things that happened just by her being able to be in the room from the age of 9 is by the time she was 13 years old, she had her own investment account.
Right. Yeah.
And she's doing her own investing at the age of 13 she started.
That's fantastic.
And so that is,
it's been amazing.
This is why it's still this kind of core founding group where we're spreading the knowledge as we can within our own veins. But that was one of those oh my gosh, we've literally changed kind of the trajectory of someone's life just by her being in a room. How many times can you...
absorbing.
And to me, that exemplifies, it's kind of like our version of what happens a lot of times. In America, we talk about the white power structure that exists. And so a lot of times, a lot of what we see white males in business doing, they learned at the dinner tables, right? No. Listening to their parents talk, or listening to, their parent talk to a guest who was dining with them that evening. This is kind of our version of that. How are we sharing the knowledge just, in our normal, natural habits, daily habits.
And because of who you are Black women, and you do control 80% of the money flow. You're the ones that are in the best position to be doing that. Exactly. And I really do think a lot of women, a lot of mothers should be doing it from a really young age, and that's awesome.
Right.
It brings us to another idea that we've talked about, creating another avenue. And specifically sharing this information with younger women of color, even children. How do we teach them at an earlier age financial literacy and investing and the power of the compounded interest and all of those things, right? And so we've kind of delved a little bit into how we might do that as a business entity. And so, we've got some things kind of working. But
that'll have to be part 2. That'll have to be part 2 of the Get Rich or Die Trying.
But it is a part of our thesis to share this information.
So what our family did, I have 2 kids, is we have a piggy bank, and it's slotted into 4 sections. It's investments, savings, spend, and donations. Nice. And so as soon as they receive either birthday money or Christmas, half go into savings, like right off the top, and then 30% go into investments, and 10% go into donations. So and the piggy bank is slotted, and it makes sense. Like whatever you get, this percentage is already going in. So
that's brilliant.
And that's the lesson you want to have, is that, when you have money coming in, or when you're getting payouts from your assets, you need to figure out how to pay yourself first in a way that's most valuable, right? And I think, I don't think that lesson is taught to us enough. I know when I was growing up, it was my mom and my best friend's mom. They were always like, save 10% of your check every time you get it. Yeah. Well, what they didn't say was, you got to one day go beyond 10%. Like you got to start increasing it to 10, 15, and 20, so that you're not, as your education improves, as your salary improves, you want to be putting more of that money away, and not just suddenly I'm about be out here about to be about it, and I'm a floss on everything. Like, no, you gotta have more of a strategy. And I think there are a lot of us that are homeowners. There are a lot of us that think of different ways to invest in other businesses that are in this group.
Have a plan.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the joy of being in the group, is because we're bouncing these ideas off of one another about how do we get that wealth profile? How do we, somebody last night was talking about she wants to be a CTO, and she's got like 2 other roles she's got to fill before she gets there. And suddenly it's like, what do I want to be when I grow up? I need to put a strategy around that, other than filthy rich, boatloads of cash.
Which almost sounds like a song lyric. So Get Rich or Die Trying. You knew it was coming. Can you just give us a few verses? Like,
I can't remember any verses of the song.
Okay, then any 50 Cent song, like anything.
See, you got the wrong people for song lyrics.
Any song then. I'll take anything.
I got so 50 Cent does the I'm a party in the club, bottle full of bub. See, you heard it in your head.
This has been another episode of #Finance. I'm your host, Barrington Miller, and I'd like to thank the lovely ladies of Get Rich or Die Trying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Grace from the CSC reminding you to make sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates on our listed companies as well as new listing alerts. For more in-depth content, be sure to pick up our free quarterly magazine, Public Entrepreneur, available online at thecsc.com.